It started with a red phone call to the trauma bay, a code black at 2:13 a.m. Dr. Evelyn Hart, lead trauma surgeon at Northridge Regional Hospital, had just stepped out of the OR after a long emergency procedure. She was untying her surgical gown when the page came in. Unidentified male, massive abdominal trauma, ETA 4 minutes. These weren't unusual calls at a level 1 trauma center. But what arrived next set off a chain of events no one at the hospital could explain. The man on the gurney was in his 40s, bleeding heavily from a jagged wound in his side. He wore no shoes. His clothing was torn, soaked in blood, and charred as if he'd been in a fire. No wallet, no phone, no ID. His fingerprints returned no matches, not locally, not in any federal system. He was a ghost in the system, a Jane Doe with a heartbeat. He wasn't just hurt, said ER nurse Teresa Lang in a later interview. He looked like someone had tried to erase him. Dr. Hart was known for keeping calm under pressure. At 39, she'd handled dozens of emergency surgeries, motorcycle wrecks, stabbings, mass shootings. But something about this man was different. His body was covered in long-healed scars, surgical sutures of unknown origin, and strange symmetrical burn patterns along his ribs. She asked if anyone knew where he'd been found. One EMT replied he'd been dumped on the steps of a local church, unconscious. He was barely breathing, the EMT said. Whoever left him didn't want him dead. Just gone. Dr. Hart ordered him rushed to surgery. No family, no consent, just a race against time. The man had internal bleeding, a ruptured spleen, and multiple fractures. She scrubbed in and began what would become her final procedure at Northridge Hospital. No one knew then that less than an hour later, she would simply vanish, mid-shift in scrubs without taking her phone, keys, or car. What made the case chilling wasn't just that she disappeared. It was that her last known act was saving the life of a man who legally didn't exist, and that everything surrounding his arrival, his condition, and his recovery left more questions than answers. The hospital security system, typically precise and carefully monitored, would later be found to have entire blocks of corrupted footage. The man's blood sample mysteriously went missing from the lab. And when he finally regained consciousness 2 days later, he said just one thing before falling silent again. "Where's the surgeon?" Dr. Evelyn Hart finished the operation just after 3:40 a.m. She had successfully stopped the internal bleeding, removed the spleen, and stabilized the unknown man. It was, by all accounts, a textbook trauma response. She dictated her post-op notes into the hospital system, signed off the patient to ICU, and stepped into the hallway, exhausted but calm. A nurse named Callie Jensen saw her exit the surgical wing. She was pale, like she'd seen something, Callie recalled. I asked if she was okay, and she just said, "He wasn't supposed to survive." Then she walked away. That was the last time anyone saw Dr. Hart. She didn't clock out. She didn't call her husband, Adam, who later told police she never came home. Her car remained parked in the hospital lot. Her locker was untouched. Her phone sat in the staff lounge. By 6:15 a.m., when the next shift began, Evelyn was simply gone. Security was notified immediately. At first, staff assumed she'd stepped outside for a break or had been called into another emergency. But when her name didn't appear on any staff log, and no one reported seeing her again, concerns deepened. A formal missing persons report was filed before noon. Security reviewed footage from every corridor surrounding the operating room and ICU, over 12 hours worth. But something was wrong. Nearly 40 minutes of footage from the east stairwell was corrupted. A section from the rear emergency exit showed flickering static. Most alarming, the camera above the trauma bay door, where she was last seen, went black at 3:43 a.m., exactly 3 minutes after she left surgery. When IT tried to recover the files, the data was unreadable. It's like the footage was scrambled by a magnet, one technician reported. No other recordings in the hospital were affected, just those around Dr. Hart's last known location. By the end of the day, police had launched a full-scale investigation. They searched the hospital grounds, nearby alleys, rooftops, even the incinerator area. Canine units picked up her scent near the stairwell, then lost it completely. Nothing about her disappearance made sense. She had no mental health history, no family issues, no motive to flee. She loved her job, had recently been awarded for excellence in trauma response, and had just been offered a position at a research institute in Boston. Her husband was in disbelief. "She wouldn't walk out on a patient," he said. "Especially not like this." For all intents and purposes, it was as if Dr. Evelyn Hart had been erased from the hospital, just like the man she had saved. While the search for Dr. Hart intensified, the man she operated on remained unconscious in the ICU. No name, no ID, no known family. Nurses referred to him as Trauma Bay John Doe. He was heavily sedated but stable. His injuries, though extensive, were healing faster than expected. His heart rate, blood pressure, and neurological scans were all within range. But something about him disturbed the staff. He refused to speak. His eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling or the door, never people. The ICU charge nurse, Monique Rios, said he never asked for water or food. He'd just stare. For hours. Like he was waiting for something. When pressed for basic information, name, address, emergency contact, he'd only whisper, "I shouldn't be here." Then silence. Detectives tried to interview him 3 times. Each session was recorded, but yielded almost nothing. He provided no identity, no history, and no answers about the night he arrived. On the 4th attempt, Detective Russ Foreman asked bluntly, "Do you know what happened to Dr. Evelyn Hart?" The man sat upright for the first time. His eyes narrowed. "She looked too long," he said. "She shouldn't have seen it." Then he turned his face to the wall and refused to say another word. When pressed for clarification, he shut down completely, heart rate rising, oxygen levels dipping. Doctors had to sedate him again. From that moment on, he spoke to no one. Investigators focused on tracing his origin. They canvassed the area around the church where he was found, interviewed the priest who discovered him, and pulled security footage from surrounding businesses. Oddly, no cameras captured anyone dropping him off. The church's security system had failed between 1:58 and 2:11 a.m., a blackout window that perfectly matched his arrival time. Footprints were found in the alley, large military-style boots, but no DNA, no blood trail, nothing to indicate who had carried or dragged him there. He had arrived out of nowhere, just like Evelyn had disappeared into it. The detectives began to suspect the events were connected, but they had no proof, no leads, and a patient who would rather rot in silence than tell the truth. As the days passed, what began as a missing persons report became a full-blown departmental mystery. The hospital administration cooperated fully, but tensions mounted. Staff members were instructed not to speak to media. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered that Evelyn had been threatened. Others claimed she discovered something during surgery, something she wasn't supposed to see. A few believed she had a breakdown and fled. But none of it explained the corrupted footage, the abandoned personal items, or the fact that her last logged action was saving a man who legally didn't exist. The internal investigation team uncovered something even stranger. During her procedure on the John Doe, Evelyn had dictated unusually detailed surgical notes into the hospital's digital recorder. But when IT attempted to retrieve the audio files, they were blank. Metadata showed the files were created at 3:17 a.m., but the actual recordings had been wiped, replaced by static. "That's impossible," said the tech. "This system has triple redundancy. Data doesn't just disappear. More oddities emerged." The man's surgical scars were examined more closely, and 2 of them matched incisions typically used for organ harvesting, procedures rarely performed outside military or black market medicine. One wound on his chest looked recent but showed no signs of infection, almost as if it had been cauterized with heat rather than sutured. Pathologists were brought in to examine biopsy samples, but 3 of the slides mysteriously went missing in transit to the lab. Evelyn's digital ID had last been used to access the hospital's surgical imaging system at 3:41 a.m., minutes after she had supposedly walked out, yet no one remembered seeing her after that time. The login came from a workstation located in the subbasement imaging lab, an area under renovation and off-limits for weeks. When detectives checked the room, They found the computer had been powered down, and the CCTV camera at the lab door had melted wiring inside its casing, as if it had been exposed to high voltage. The fire department found no signs of an actual fire. "It's like someone surged the system from within," said the building inspector. But why? And how? Theories began stacking up. One suggested Evelyn had stumbled into a covert medical network, illegal organ trafficking, perhaps, or experimental procedures gone wrong. Another posited that John Doe was an intelligence asset injured during a classified operation and dumped to avoid political fallout. But none of these theories explained Evelyn's complete disappearance, the loss of digital files, or the gaps in footage that occurred only in her vicinity. The local news picked up the story, dubbing it "The Surgeon and the Shadow." Evelyn's photo was everywhere: billboards, highway signs, milk cartons. The public poured out sympathy, but no useful tips emerged. Her husband Adam went on national television, pleading, "If anyone knows anything about what happened that night, please come forward. I just want my wife home." But the tip line remained silent. Even the patient, awake and alert, refused to speak her name again. 2 weeks after Evelyn Hart vanished, a junior IT technician named Caleb Renteria made an unexpected discovery. He was reviewing server activity logs from the hospital's secured imaging system, the same one Evelyn had last accessed from the off-limits sub-basement. Hidden within a quarantined data folder mislabeled as a system backup, Caleb found a file titled March 17th, 23 annotated to PDF. It had never been officially saved or uploaded to Evelyn's profile. The document was encrypted and took hours to decode, but what he uncovered was chilling. It wasn't a surgical report. It was a personal log, typed hastily, almost in stream of consciousness. The first lines read, "Something is wrong with him. His blood reacts like it's been altered. Clots instantly. Doesn't behave like human plasma. His body heat never dropped. I opened him up, and nothing inside matches the reports." The document detailed Evelyn's growing suspicion during the operation. She described unusual tissue density, impossible regenerative scarring, and organ displacement that did not align with the patient's visible trauma. She wrote that she had requested an immediate histopathology consultation, but that the page never went through. "I thought it was a system glitch, but now I'm not so sure," she typed. "I feel like I'm being watched, even inside the OR." Near the end of the note, her tone changed. "He opened his eyes for a moment during the surgery," she wrote. "Just a sliver. He looked at me, not in pain, but with intent, like he recognized me. He mouthed something, but I couldn't make it out. I feel cold. I'm gonna finish closing him, then talk to security about this. I'm not leaving without answers." The document ended abruptly, with no signature or safe confirmation. Caleb reported it immediately to the lead investigator. But within 24 hours, the file vanished from the server. The hospital's digital forensics team was brought in, but their scan revealed no trace of the original path or file. "It's like it was never there," they said. When the lead investigator asked Caleb to pull a copy from his local drive, he discovered his laptop had crashed overnight. The hard drive was corrupted beyond recovery. "That's not a coincidence," he insisted. "Someone didn't want this out." Caleb was suspended temporarily pending review of his access logs. But his revelation opened a new line of inquiry. If Evelyn had documented something anomalous before her disappearance, and that documentation had now been scrubbed, then someone with high-level access might be covering it up. The question was, who? And what exactly had she seen during that surgery that made her a target? 31 days after Dr. Evelyn Hart vanished, the man she had operated on, known to staff only as John Doe, was discharged. It happened without warning, without clearance, and without a single signature on the hospital's standard release forms. Nurse Monique Rios arrived at the ICU that morning to find the man's bed empty, his chart missing, and his vitals monitor turned off. No one had seen him leave. Security footage was checked. Again, large blocks of data were corrupted, specifically between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., during the same time window Evelyn had disappeared a month prior. "It's the exact same gap," said the IT technician on duty. "It's like déjà vu. Someone's wiping us clean." Hospital administrators tried to downplay the incident, saying the man likely walked out on his own after regaining strength. But that didn't explain the lost files, the erased medication records, or the missing blood samples from the hospital lab. Detectives reopened the physical search of the building, now treating it as a crime scene rather than a missing persons case. They found something strange in the laundry chute system, hidden behind a malfunctioning hatch in the subbasement. A set of footprints leading into a sealed crawl space. Inside was a surgical gown rolled tight and a name tag E. Hart, MD. The gown was stained with a brownish-red substance that had dried into the fabric. Tests later confirmed it wasn't human blood. More disturbingly, the inside collar of the gown had been marked with a small triangular burn. Cauterized, not torn, almost like it had been seared with a heated brand. Investigators couldn't determine its origin. "She had to have been taken," said Detective Foreman, "and someone made sure we'd never know how." Even with this disturbing clue, there were no witnesses, no fingerprints, no clear motive. Theories grew darker. Some believed Evelyn had been silenced because she uncovered something tied to a larger criminal enterprise: human experimentation, unlicensed research, organ trafficking. Others whispered that she had found something not meant to be found, that the man wasn't just a trauma patient, but a subject. Whatever the truth was, it left behind a cold trail. 1 month became 6. The case file grew thicker, but not closer to resolution. Evelyn Hart's office remained untouched. Her locker sealed. Her hospital badge, oddly, continued to register phantom swipes on random doors around the building, none of which were ever caught on camera. 6 months into the investigation, most leads had gone dry. Dr. Hart's face had been printed on flyers, aired on nightly news, and posted at every hospital in the region. A few false sightings were reported. One woman claimed to have seen her on a bus in Seattle. Another swore she'd spotted her in a pharmacy in Tucson, but none of them panned out. Her husband, Adam, had all but moved into their home office, compiling timelines, documents, police reports, and press clippings. He worked with a private investigator, Linda Schaefer, who had experience with medical disappearance cases. She turned up something no one else had noticed: a faint distortion in the last known frame of Evelyn leaving the surgical wing. It wasn't a glitch. It was a person, barely visible, a shadow behind the glass window of the double doors. Enlarged and enhanced, the image showed a blurred face, obscured by what looked like a surgical mask and cap, but no staff ID badge. Hospital leadership claimed no one matching that description was scheduled to be on duty. Schaefer cross-referenced all badge logs, even those of maintenance staff. There was no record of any male medical personnel assigned to the OR level between 3:30 and 4 a.m. on the night Evelyn disappeared. When she brought the photo to Detective Foreman, he was stunned. "We combed that footage a dozen times," he said. "How'd we miss this?" It raised chilling possibilities. If someone else had been in the restricted area, possibly unbadged and unregistered, how did they bypass security? And more importantly, were they the last person to see Evelyn alive? The detective ordered a recheck of all surgical toolkits that had been signed out that night. One tray, typically used for thoracic surgeries, had one scalpel missing. The discrepancy had been written off as an inventory error. Now it was evidence. A silent alarm had also been triggered at the emergency stairwell at 3:47 a.m., never investigated because the motion sensor system had registered dozens of false alarms during that week due to renovations. But now, with Evelyn's badge swipes still inexplicably logging in the system long after her disappearance, a new theory emerged. She had never left the hospital. Someone had taken her, hid her, and used her own ID to mask their movements. But why? By the 1-year anniversary of Dr. Evelyn Hart's disappearance, the official investigation had stalled. Northridge Regional Hospital quietly distanced itself from the case, issuing a brief statement honoring Evelyn's service but refusing further comment on the internal anomalies. Her badge was deactivated. Her case file, though still technically open, was reassigned to a cold case unit. But behind closed doors, the people who had worked beside her still whispered. Some staff requested transfers off the trauma floor. 2 nurses from the night shift resigned abruptly, one citing stress, the other refusing to explain. The silence was too loud, said one orderly, who later spoke anonymously. You could feel it, like something was watching, like it hadn't left. Rumors persisted about strange security badge activity continuing late at night, doors opening with no one on camera, elevators descending on their own, lights flickering near the old imaging lab. Her husband, Adam, never stopped searching. He created a digital archive with every known detail, down to the exact surgical tray she used that night. He made timelines, mapped swipe card data, even hired a forensic video team to rebuild the corrupted footage frame by frame. In one sequence, lasting just 2.7 seconds, the enhanced feed revealed something chilling. Evelyn, just before walking past the ICU, looked over her shoulder, not toward a person, but at the ceiling camera. Her expression wasn't casual. It was deliberate, as if she knew she was being watched, as if she knew something was wrong. The camera flickered immediately after. The sequence ends there. She was trying to leave a message, Adam later said, and someone didn't want us to see it. Detective Foreman eventually retired, but not before making a quiet request that Evelyn's case file remain active in federal systems. This wasn't just a disappearance, he said. It was an erasure. To this day, the case is referenced in law enforcement trainings about digital sabotage and data anomalies. But no one has come forward. The John Doe, never legally named, was never seen again. His medical file vanished from the hospital's database. Even the church that reported his drop-off closed 6 months later, citing ongoing threats and vandalism. Those who still talk about the case call it the one that reached into the walls. It was never just about the patient. It was about what Evelyn Hart might have discovered, and what someone would do to make sure it never left that room. In the years since Evelyn's disappearance, the medical community has wrestled with the legacy she left behind. Hospitals across the country quietly reviewed their surveillance policies, surgical recording protocols, and restricted access areas. Trauma teams were briefed on situational awareness, not just for patients, but for the people who might enter their halls undetected. Several anonymous hospital staff across 3 states reported incidents eerily similar. Unidentified patients with no history, blank biometric records, surgical anomalies. Most were dismissed as stress or clerical errors. But those who remembered Evelyn's story didn't brush them off. She saw something, one former Northridge nurse said. She didn't run from it. She reported it. She documented it. And then, she vanished. What haunts the staff most isn't just that Evelyn disappeared. It's that she did everything right. She followed protocol. She reported concerns. She stayed calm under pressure. But it still wasn't enough to protect her. Her courage, her insistence on treating the man and documenting the truth, may have cost her everything. And yet, in that sacrifice, she left behind a warning for every medical professional who follows. Be vigilant. Ask questions. Document everything, especially when it doesn't make sense. Because in a world where not every patient wants to be known, and not every record tells the whole story, it's up to those in white coats to fight for truth, even when it puts them at risk. Dr. Evelyn Hart walked into that operating room because she believed in medicine. She believed in saving lives, whether they had a name, a story, or even a past. That night, she didn't hesitate. She did her job, documented everything she saw, and spoke up when things didn't make sense. And for that, whatever it was she uncovered, she paid a price no one should ever have to. Her disappearance remains one of the most haunting and unexplained medical mysteries in recent history. But the silence surrounding it is not an excuse to forget. It's a reason to remember, because her case wasn't just about one vanished doctor. It was about the cracks in a system that should have protected her, and the terrifying possibility that someone else might slip through those cracks next. To every medical professional watching this, never stop asking questions. If a patient doesn't add up, if records vanish, if footage is missing, if your gut tells you something's wrong, don't ignore it. Speak, document, share, and never assume that just because someone is in your hospital, they're there to be helped. Sometimes they're there to hide, and sometimes they're not alone. Medicine is built on trust, but it's also a shield. Protect yourselves, protect each other, and remember Evelyn Hart, not as a victim, but as a warning. We may never know exactly what happened in that operating room. We may never understand who that man truly was, or what he carried inside him. But what we do know is this. Someone didn't want us to find out, and someone made sure we couldn't. Kendall, thank you for watching. This is the Vanished Echo Stories, where the missing are not forgotten, and every silence has a sound if you listen closely enough.